The sun has long since set over the tiny village of Littlebrook, and a deep, mellow stillness is beginning to descend, wrapping the stone cottages and cobbled lanes in a tranquil embrace. The sky above has turned from the pale blue of late afternoon to a darker, softer shade, and now it holds the first faint stars, small points of light that appear one by one, unhurried and steady. The air has cooled, but not uncomfortably so, and there is a gentleness to the evening that seems to settle over everything like a blanket, soft and familiar. Eleanor stands at the heavy oak door of the village library, her hand resting on the cool brass handle, for just a moment before she turns the key in the lock. The sound of the bolt sliding into place is satisfying in its finality, a small sound that marks the end of her working day. She has performed this same action countless times before, and there is a comfort in the repetition, in the way her fingers know exactly how to turn the key, in the way the door fits snugly into its frame. The library behind her is dark now, the rows of books resting quietly on their shelves, and she can almost feel the stillness of the empty room at her back. She places the key carefully into the small leather purse she carries, closes the clasp with a soft click, and turns to face the narrow lane that leads through the village. The gas street lamps are already lit, their amber glow spreading in gentle pools along the cobblestones, and the light flickers very slightly, creating small, moving shadows that dance without urgency across the stone walls of the cottages. Eleanor begins to walk, her steps measured and unhurried, the sound of her shoes on the cobbles a quiet, regular rhythm that blends with the stillness around her. The village of Littlebrook is small, no more than a scattering of cottages and shops arranged along a handful of narrow lanes, and at this hour it is almost entirely quiet. Most of the windows are already glowing with the soft light of oil lamps or candles, and here and there Eleanor can see the faint silhouette of someone moving inside, preparing their evening meal or settling by the fire. She does not hurry. There is no reason to hurry. The evening stretches out before her with a slowness that feels almost luxurious, and she allows herself to notice the small details that she might otherwise pass by. She passes the butcher's shop first, its dark windows reflecting the street light in a soft, muted way. The shop has been closed for hours now, and the window display, usually filled with cuts of meat and strings of sausages, is empty except for a single wooden block and a few hooks hanging from the ceiling. Eleanor glances at the reflection of the street lamp in the glass, sees the way it wavers slightly, and then continues on. The butcher, Mr. Hartley, lives above the shop with his wife, and Eleanor can see a faint light coming from one of the upper windows. She imagines them sitting together in their small sitting room, perhaps sharing a pot of tea, and the thought is a pleasant one, warm and ordinary. A little further along the lane she comes to the bakery, which is also dark now, though the faint, lingering smell of bread still hangs in the air. Eleanor breathes in slowly, catching the scent of flour and yeast, and she remembers stopping here earlier in the day to buy a small loaf, which is now wrapped in paper and tucked into her bag. The baker, Mrs. Whitmore, starts her work long before dawn, and by this time of evening she will be asleep, or nearly so, resting in preparation for the early morning hours. Eleanor thinks of the quiet rhythm of Mrs. Whitmore's days, the way they are shaped by the rising and cooling of the ovens, and she finds something calming in the predictability of it. The lane curves slightly, following the natural contour of the land, and as Eleanor rounds the bend, she can hear the sound of the river. It is not a large river, more of a stream, really, but it runs steadily along the edge of the village, and the sound of the water moving over the stones is a constant, gentle presence. Eleanor has always found the sound soothing, the way it never changes, the way it is always there, day and night, winter and summer. She slows her pace even more as she approaches the small stone bridge that crosses the water, and she pauses for a moment at the center of the bridge, resting her hands on the cool stone parapet. Below her the river moves in the darkness, its surface catching and reflecting the light from the nearest street lamp in small, shifting patterns. The water is not deep, and even in the dim light, Eleanor can see the pale shapes of the stones on the riverbed, worn smooth by the current. The sound of the water is soft, a murmur rather than a roar, and it blends with the other quiet sounds of the evening, the distant rustle of leaves, the faint call of a bird settling for the night. Eleanor stands there for a long moment, simply listening, letting the sound wash over her, and she feels the tension of the day, small as it was, begin to ease from her shoulders. She continues across the bridge and along the lane, which now climbs very gently uphill, away from the river. The cottages here are set back a little from the road, each with a small front garden, enclosed by a low stone wall or a wooden fence. Some of the gardens are tidy, with neat rows of vegetables and carefully tended flower beds, while others are more wild, overgrown with roses and honeysuckle that spill over the walls in soft, fragrant cascades. Eleanor's own cottage is near the end of the lane, and as she approaches it she feels a familiar sense of anticipation, quiet and comfortable, the knowledge that soon she will be inside, with the door closed behind her and the world outside held at a gentle distance. Her cottage is small, built of the same gray stone as all the other buildings in the village, with a low thatched roof and 2 small windows that face the lane. The front door is painted a dark green, the paint slightly weathered but still solid, and there is a simple iron latch that lifts with a satisfying weight. Eleanor reaches for the latch, feels the cool metal under her fingers, and pushes the door open. It swings inward smoothly, and she steps across the threshold into the narrow hallway that runs the length of the cottage. Inside, the air is cooler than it was outside, and there is a faint smell of old wood and stone, mingled with the lingering scent of the fire she lit that morning before leaving for work. She closes the door behind her, shutting out the night, and stands for a moment in the quiet darkness, letting her eyes adjust. The hallway is narrow, with a stone floor and whitewashed walls, and at the far end she can see the faint outline of the door that leads to the back garden. To her left is the door to the sitting room, and to her right the door to the small kitchen. She moves slowly, unhurried, setting her bag down on the narrow table that stands against the wall, and then she removes her coat, hanging it carefully on the wooden peg beside the door. The sitting room is small and simply furnished, with a fireplace set into one wall, a single armchair positioned close to the hearth, and a low table beside it. There is a small bookshelf against the opposite wall, filled with books that Eleanor has collected over the years, and a rug on the floor, worn but still soft underfoot. The fireplace is already prepared, as it always is, with kindling and a few small logs arranged neatly on the grate, and beside the hearth there is a box of matches. Eleanor crosses the room, moving slowly, and she kneels down in front of the fireplace, feeling the coolness of the stone floor through the fabric of her skirt. She takes a match from the box, strikes it against the rough side, and watches as the small flame springs to life, bright and steady. She holds the match to the kindling, and after a moment the dry twigs catch, and the flame begins to spread, small and orange, licking at the wood with a gentle persistence. Eleanor adds another piece of kindling, then another, and slowly the fire grows, the flames climbing higher, casting a warm, flickering light across the room. She adds a log, positioning it carefully, and then she sits back on her heels, watching as the fire takes hold, the wood crackling softly as it begins to burn. The warmth from the fire spreads slowly, filling the small room with a comfortable heat that seems to seep into her bones. Eleanor stands, brushing a few specks of ash from her hands, and she moves to the armchair, settling into it with a sense of deep relief. The chair is old, its upholstery worn smooth by years of use, but it is perfectly shaped to her body, and she sinks into it gratefully, feeling the tension in her back and legs begin to ease. She does not reach for a book, though there are several stacked on the table beside her. Instead, she simply sits, her hands resting loosely in her lap, and she lets her gaze rest on the fire, watching the flames dance and flicker, listening to the soft crackle of the burning wood. Outside, the village is settling into the night. Eleanor can hear very faintly the distant sound of a door closing, the muffled bark of a dog, and then silence again, deep and unbroken. The clock in the hallway ticks steadily, a measured, regular sound that marks the passing of time without urgency. Eleanor closes her eyes for a moment, breathing slowly, and she feels a sense of peace settle over her, heavy and warm, like the weight of a blanket. She opens her eyes again and looks around the room, taking in the familiar details. The firelight casts long shadows on the walls, and the small objects on the mantelpiece, a clay jug, a pair of candlesticks, a small framed photograph, are outlined in soft, golden light. The photograph is of her parents, taken many years ago, and though their faces are indistinct in the dim light, Eleanor knows every line and feature by heart. She feels a quiet affection for them, a sense of connection that is gentle and uncomplicated, and she is glad to have their image here, watching over the room. The fire continues to burn, the flames settling into a steady rhythm, and Eleanor allows her mind to drift, not thinking of anything in particular, but simply letting thoughts come and go without effort. She thinks of the library, of the rows of books waiting quietly on their shelves, and she thinks of the people who came in today, a few familiar faces, people she has known for years, who greeted her with a nod or a quiet word before disappearing into the stacks. She thinks of the river, of the way the water moved over the stones, and she thinks of the bridge, solid and unchanging, spanning the narrow stream. Her thoughts move slowly, without direction or purpose, and she finds a kind of comfort in the aimlessness of it, in the way her mind is free to wander without the pressure of decisions or concerns. The warmth of the fire is pleasant, and she shifts slightly in her chair, adjusting her position, and then she is still again, her body relaxed, her breathing slow and even. Time passes, though Eleanor is not particularly aware of it. The fire burns lower, the flames shrinking down to a bed of glowing embers, and the light in the room becomes softer, more diffuse. The shadows on the walls fade, and the room takes on a gentle dimness that is soothing rather than oppressive. Eleanor does not move to add more wood to the fire. The warmth is still there, radiating from the embers, and it is enough. She sits quietly, her hands still resting in her lap, and she listens to the silence, which is not really silence at all, but a tapestry of small, quiet sounds, the tick of the clock, the faint creak of the house settling, the whisper of the wind outside. She thinks briefly of the tasks that await her tomorrow, the routine of opening the library, of shelving the books that were returned yesterday, of helping the occasional visitor find what they are looking for. But these thoughts do not trouble her. They are simply there, part of the natural rhythm of her days, and she knows that when tomorrow comes, she will attend to them, as she always does, calmly and without haste. For now there is only this moment, this quiet evening, this stillness that seems to hold her gently. Eleanor's eyelids grow heavy, and she blinks slowly, feeling the pull of sleep beginning to settle over her. She does not resist it. There is no reason to resist. The day is done, and the evening has unfolded in its usual predictable way, and now it is time to let go, to allow herself to drift into the soft, welcoming darkness of sleep. She shifts slightly in her chair, finding a more comfortable position, and she closes her eyes again, this time letting them stay closed. The fire glows quietly in the hearth, the embers pulsing with a gentle light, and the room is filled with a warmth that is both physical and something more, a sense of safety and contentment that wraps around Eleanor like a cocoon. Her breathing slows, deepens, and her thoughts become even more distant, fragmentary images that float through her mind without weight or substance. She sees the library, the rows of books, the heavy oak door. She sees the river, the water moving over the stones. She sees the lane, the cobblestones, the pools of amber light from the street lamps. And then, gradually, these images fade, and there is only the darkness, warm and soft, and the quiet sound of her own breathing, slow and steady. Eleanor is not quite asleep, but she is not quite awake either. She is somewhere in between, suspended in a state of gentle suspension, where time seems to stretch and soften, and where there is nothing to do, nothing to think, nothing to worry about. She is simply here, in this room and this moment, and that is enough. The clock in the hallway continues to tick, marking the passage of minutes and hours, but Eleanor is no longer aware of it. The sound blends with the other sounds of the night, becoming part of the background, a steady, reassuring presence that requires no attention. The fire continues to glow, though the light is now very faint, barely more than a suggestion of warmth in the darkness. The room is peaceful, still, a small sanctuary set apart from the world outside. Eleanor's body relaxes completely, her muscles loosening, her limbs growing heavy. She can feel the chair supporting her, the worn fabric soft against her skin, and she can feel the warmth of the fire, gentle and constant. There is no discomfort, no restlessness. She is perfectly at ease, perfectly content. Her mind drifts, touching briefly on memories and thoughts, but none of them hold her attention for long. They simply pass through like clouds moving across a clear sky, and then they are gone. She thinks of the village, of the cottages with their glowing windows, of the people inside, settling in for the night. She thinks of the baker, Mrs. Whitmore, already asleep, and the butcher, Mr. Hartley, perhaps still sitting by his fire, perhaps already in bed. She thinks of the library, dark and silent, the books resting on their shelves, waiting for tomorrow. These thoughts are not vivid or detailed. They are gentle, blurred at the edges, more like impressions than actual images. The night outside is deep and quiet now. The last sounds of the village have faded away, and there is only the faint whisper of the wind moving through the trees and over the rooftops. It is a sound that Eleanor has heard countless times before, and it is familiar and comforting, a reminder that the world continues to turn, that the seasons change, that life goes on in its slow, steady way. She is part of that rhythm, part of the quiet flow of days and nights, and she finds a deep sense of peace in that knowledge. Her breathing slows even more, each breath long and even, and her chest rises and falls with a gentle, regular motion. She is barely aware of her body now. It feels distant, almost separate from her, as if she is floating just above it, held in a space that is warm and soft and infinitely safe. The boundaries between waking and sleeping blur, and she lets herself drift, not resisting, not reaching for anything, simply allowing herself to be carried along by the gentle current of sleep. The fire in the hearth is almost out now. The embers have dimmed to a faint red glow, and the light they cast is barely visible. The room is shadowed, the familiar shapes of the furniture reduced to soft, indistinct forms. But the warmth remains, a gentle presence that fills the space and keeps the chill of the night at bay. Eleanor is warm, comfortable, perfectly at rest. She is aware, in some distant part of her mind, that she could get up, that she could move to her bed, pull the covers over herself, and sleep there. But the effort seems too great, and there is no urgency to it. The chair is comfortable, the fire is warm, and the room is peaceful. She is content to stay where she is, to let sleep come to her here, in this familiar place, surrounded by the quiet, gentle presence of her small cottage. Her thoughts grow slower, more fragmented, until they are barely thoughts at all, just faint impressions that rise and fall without shape or meaning. She sees light, soft and golden. She hears water moving over stones. She feels warmth spreading through her body. And then even these impressions fade, and there is only the darkness, soft and welcoming, and the deep, restful silence of sleep. The clock in the hallway continues to tick, steady and unchanging, and the village outside continues its slow descent into the full quiet of night. A few lights still burn in the windows of the cottages, but they are growing fewer, and soon they too will be extinguished, and the village will be dark, wrapped in the gentle embrace of the night. The river continues to flow, its soft murmur a constant presence, and the wind continues to move through the trees, a quiet, steady breath. Eleanor sleeps, or something very close to sleep, her body relaxed, her mind at peace. There are no dreams, or if there are, they are so faint and insubstantial that they leave no impression. There is only the quiet, the stillness, the sense of being held and supported by something larger and more enduring than herself. The room around her is a cocoon, a safe space carved out of the darkness, and she rests within it, undisturbed and untroubled. Time moves forward, slow and unhurried, and the night deepens. The air outside grows cooler, and a faint mist begins to rise from the river, spreading through the village in thin, ghostly tendrils. But inside the cottage, everything is still warm, still safe. The embers in the fireplace glow faintly, a last reminder of the fire that burned so brightly earlier in the evening, and the warmth they provide is enough to keep the chill at bay. Eleanor does not stir. She is deeply at rest, her breathing slow and even, her body perfectly relaxed. There is no tension in her, no worry, no concern. She is simply here, present in this moment, held by the quiet and the warmth and the gentle embrace of sleep. The day has passed, the evening has come and gone, and now there is only the night, soft and endless, stretching out in all directions. The village around her is silent now, all the lights extinguished, all the doors closed. The people of Littlebrook are asleep, each in their own bed, each in their own cottage, and the village itself seems to sleep as well, its narrow lanes and stone buildings resting quietly under the dark sky. The stars above are bright, countless points of light scattered across the heavens, and they shine down on the village with a steady, unchanging glow. Inside her cottage, Eleanor remains in her chair by the fire, her head resting against the back of the chair, her hands still folded in her lap. She is warm, comfortable, deeply at peace. The room around her is familiar and safe, and she is held by it, cradled in its quiet embrace. There is nothing to disturb her, nothing to trouble her. She is exactly where she should be, exactly where she wants to be, and that is all that matters. The night continues, slow and steady, and Eleanor continues to rest, her breathing slow, her body still. The fire has gone out now, the embers cooled to ash, but the warmth remains, lingering in the room like a memory. The darkness is complete, but it is not oppressive. It is gentle, welcoming, a soft blanket that covers everything and holds it in stillness. And so the evening continues, moving forward in its slow, gentle way, each moment blending into the next, without division or interruption. Eleanor remains in her chair, held in that space between waking and sleeping, where thoughts are soft and formless, where the body is at rest, where there is nothing to do but simply be. The room around her is still, the darkness complete but not heavy, and she is aware in some distant way of the comfort that surrounds her, the warmth that lingers in the air, the familiar presence of her small cottage holding her safe. She becomes aware, gradually, of the weight of her body in the chair, the way her head rests against the warm fabric, the way her hands lie loosely in her lap. There is no discomfort in any of it, only a deep sense of rightness, as if every part of her has found its proper place. Her breathing continues, slow and steady, each breath a gentle rise and fall, and she listens to it, noting the rhythm without thinking about it, simply allowing it to be. The sounds of the night are very faint now, almost imperceptible. The wind has died to barely a whisper, and the village is so quiet that Eleanor can hear the soft settling of the house around her, the small creaks and sighs that old buildings make as they rest. These sounds are familiar to her, part of the nightly symphony that plays out in every cottage, and they do not disturb her. Instead, they seem to add to the sense of peace, reminding her that she is not alone, that the house itself is a living thing, breathing quietly in the darkness. She thinks briefly of the library again, of the way it looked when she locked the door earlier this evening. She can picture it clearly in her mind, the rows of shelves stretching back into the shadows, the tall windows with their heavy curtains drawn against the night, the front desk with its neat stack of papers, and the brass bell that visitors ring when they need assistance. It is a space she knows intimately, every corner and shelf, every book in its place. She has worked there for so many years that it has become an extension of herself, and she feels a quiet affection for it, the way one might feel affection for an old friend. Tomorrow she will return, and the routine will begin again. She will unlock the heavy oak door, push it open, and step inside. She will pull back the curtains to let in the morning light, and she will check the returns box to see which books have been brought back overnight. She will shelve them carefully, running her fingers along the spines to find their proper places, and then she will sit at the front desk and wait for the first visitor of the day. It is a routine she has performed countless times, and there is a deep comfort in its predictability, in knowing exactly what each day will bring. But that is tomorrow, and tomorrow feels very far away. Right now there is only this moment, this quiet evening, this sense of complete rest. Eleanor lets the thought of tomorrow drift away, lets it dissolve into the soft darkness that surrounds her, and she brings her attention back to the present, to the warmth of the room, to the gentle weight of her body, to the slow rhythm of her breathing. The clock in the hallway continues its steady ticking, and Eleanor listens to it for a while, counting the beats in her mind, letting them mark the passage of time without feeling any urgency about it. Tick, tick, tick. The sound is mechanical, but somehow soothing, a reminder that time continues to move forward, that the night is progressing in its slow, measured way. She does not know what time it is, and she does not care. There is no need to know. The night will last as long as it lasts, and when morning comes, it will come, and that is all there is to it. Her thoughts drift to the people of the village, to the neighbors she has known for years. She thinks of Mrs. Whitmore, the baker, who rises before dawn to prepare the day's bread. Eleanor imagines her asleep now, her small bedroom above the bakery dark and quiet, her body resting deeply after the long day's work. She thinks of Mr. Hartley, the butcher, and wonders if he is still awake, or if he too has gone to bed. She thinks of the vicar, Reverend Thompson, who lives in the cottage beside the church, and of Miss Davies, the elderly woman who lives alone at the far end of the village and spends her days tending her garden. These are the people who make up her world, familiar faces that she sees week after week, year after year. They greet each other in the lane, exchange a few words about the weather or the state of the garden, and then they move on, each returning to their own small routines. It is a simple life, a quiet life, but it is enough. Eleanor has never wished for anything more. She is content here in this small village, among these familiar faces, and she feels a sense of belonging that runs deep and steady. She shifts slightly in her chair, adjusting her position, and she becomes aware again of the fire, or rather of the absence of the fire. The embers have cooled completely now, and the hearth is dark. But the warmth remains, held in the stones and in the air, and Eleanor is still comfortable, still at ease. She does not feel any need to light another fire, to add more wood and coax the flames back to life. The warmth that is here is enough, and she is content to let it slowly fade, to let the night grow a little cooler, to let herself drift deeper into rest. Her eyelids are heavy, so heavy that it takes effort to open them, and so she does not try. She keeps them closed, and she lets the darkness fill her vision, a darkness that is soft and welcoming, that holds no fear or uncertainty. She is safe here, in her cottage, in her chair, and she knows that she can rest for as long as she needs to, that there is no one waiting for her, no task that requires her attention, no obligation that pulls at her. She is free to simply be, to exist in this moment without thought or effort. The silence deepens, becomes more complete, and Eleanor sinks into it, feeling it wrap around her like a blanket. She can no longer hear the wind outside, or the settling of the house, or even the ticking of the clock. There is only the silence, vast and gentle, and her own breathing slow and steady, moving in and out, a rhythm that is so regular, so constant, that it becomes almost hypnotic. She thinks very briefly of the river, of the way it looked from the bridge earlier this evening. She remembers the sound of the water moving over the stones, that soft, continuous murmur that never stops, never changes. It is a sound that has been there for as long as she can remember, a sound that will continue long after she is gone. And there is something deeply comforting in that thought, in the knowledge that some things are constant, that some things endure. The river flows through the village, marking its eastern edge, and beyond the river there are fields, stretching out into the darkness, and beyond the fields there are hills, rising gently against the night sky. Eleanor has walked those fields many times. In spring, when they are green with new growth, in summer when the wheat is tall and golden, in autumn when the stubble is brown and the earth is turned. She knows the paths that wind through them, the gates that must be opened and closed, the stiles that must be climbed. It is familiar territory, mapped in her mind with perfect clarity, and she finds comfort in that knowledge, in the sense that she knows this place, that she belongs here. Her thoughts continue to drift, touching lightly on memories and images, never lingering on any one thing for long. She remembers a summer afternoon many years ago, sitting by the river with a book, the sun warm on her face, the sound of the water a constant background to her reading. She remembers a winter morning, walking to the library through fresh snow, the village transformed and silent, every sound muffled, every surface clean and white. She remembers spring and the way the hedgerows burst into bloom, covering themselves with blossoms white and pink, filling the air with fragrance. These memories are not sharp or detailed. They are soft, blurred at the edges, more like impressions than actual recollections. But they are pleasant, and they bring a gentle warmth to her heart, a sense of connection to the life she has lived, to the days and years that have brought her to this moment. She does not dwell on them, does not examine them, or try to hold on to them. She simply lets them pass through her mind, like clouds moving across the sky, and then they are gone, and there is only the quiet again, the stillness, the deep sense of rest. The night outside is complete now. The last traces of twilight have faded from the sky, and the stars shine with a clear, steady light, undimmed by any earthly glow. The village is dark, every cottage shuttered and still, every lane empty and silent. The river flows on, its surface black and smooth, reflecting the stars in small, shifting points of light. The fields are dark, the hills are dark, and the whole world seems to have settled into a deep, restful sleep. Inside her cottage, Eleanor continues to rest, her body still, her mind quiet. She is aware in some distant way that time is passing, that the night is moving forward, but it does not trouble her. There is no urgency, no need to mark the hours or measure their passing. The night is long, and she has all the time in the world. She can rest here in this chair for as long as she wishes, and no one will disturb her, no one will ask anything of her. She becomes aware of her hands again, of the way they rest in her lap, the fingers loosely curled, the palms facing upward. She can feel the fabric of her skirt beneath them, soft and familiar, and she can feel the gentle warmth of her own body, radiating outward in a slow, steady way. She does not move. There is no need to move. She is perfectly comfortable, perfectly at ease, and she allows herself to simply rest, to let her body be still, to let her mind drift in the soft darkness. Her breathing continues, each breath long and slow, and she focuses on it for a while, feeling the air move in through her nose, fill her lungs, and then move out again. It is a simple process, automatic and unchanging, but there is something soothing in paying attention to it, in noting the rhythm, in feeling the gentle rise and fall of her chest. She breathes in and she breathes out, and with each breath she feels herself sinking a little deeper into rest, a little further into the soft, welcoming embrace of sleep. The room around her is perfectly still. There is no movement, no sound, nothing to disturb the deep quiet that is settled over everything. The darkness is complete, but it is not oppressive. It is gentle, comforting, a soft presence that wraps around her and holds her safe. She is aware of the walls around her, the ceiling above her, the floor beneath her feet, and these things give her a sense of security, of being contained and protected. This is her space, her sanctuary, and she is grateful for it. She thinks of the garden behind the cottage, though she cannot see it in the darkness. She knows it well, every plant and path, every corner and border. In spring, the garden is full of flowers, daffodils and tulips, primroses and violets, and the air is filled with their scent. In summer, the roses bloom, covering the walls with color, and the herbs in the small bed by the kitchen door grow tall and fragrant. In autumn, the leaves turn gold and red, and the garden takes on a quieter beauty, more subdued but no less lovely. And in winter, the garden sleeps, the plants dormant beneath the frost, waiting for the warmth of spring to wake them again. Eleanor has tended that garden for many years, and she knows its rhythms as well as she knows the rhythms of her own life. She knows when to plant and when to prune, when to water, and when to let the rain do its work. She knows which plants thrive in the sun and which prefer the shade, and she has arranged them accordingly, creating a space that is both beautiful and practical. The garden gives her pleasure, a quiet satisfaction that comes from working with the earth, from seeing the results of her care and attention. But that is for tomorrow, or the day after, or whenever the next task presents itself. Right now, the garden is resting, just as she is resting, and there is nothing that needs to be done. She lets the thought of the garden fade away, and she brings her attention back to the present moment, to the warmth of the room, to the gentle weight of her body in the chair, to the slow, steady rhythm of her breathing. The silence is so deep now that it seems almost tangible, as if she could reach out and touch it. It fills the room, fills the cottage, fills the entire village, and Eleanor is held within it, suspended in a space where nothing moves, where nothing changes, where there is only the quiet and the stillness and the deep, restful peace. She does not try to break the silence. She does not speak or move or make any sound at all. She simply rests, letting the silence hold her, letting it enfold her in its gentle embrace. Her thoughts grow slower still, more fragmentary, until they are barely thoughts at all. She sees images faint and fleeting, the library, the river, the garden, the lanes of the village, but they do not stay long enough to form coherent memories. They simply pass through her mind like shadows, insubstantial and weightless, and then they are gone. She does not try to hold on to them. She lets them come and go as they please, and she remains still, centered in the present moment, aware only of the warmth and the quiet and the deep sense of rest that fills her. The night continues its slow progression, minute by minute, hour by hour, and Eleanor continues to rest, her body still, her mind at peace. There is no sense of time passing, no awareness of the hours slipping by. There is only the now, the eternal present, stretching out in all directions, limitless and unchanging. She is held in this moment, cradled by it, and she feels no need to move forward or look back. She is simply here, present and at peace, and that is all that matters. The warmth in the room is fading very slowly, so slowly that she is barely aware of it. The stones of the hearth are cooling, releasing their stored heat into the air, and the air itself is growing a little cooler, a little more still. But Eleanor is still comfortable. The change is so gradual that her body adjusts without effort, and she does not feel any discomfort, any chill. She is wrapped in the warmth of her own body and the warmth of the blankets on the chair, and she is perfectly content. She becomes aware at some point of a faint sound outside, so faint that she almost misses it. It is the sound of an owl calling from somewhere in the distance, a soft, low hoot that carries through the still night air. Eleanor listens to it, noting the sound without thinking about it, and she feels a connection to the bird, to the life that continues outside her cottage, moving through the darkness on silent wings. The owl calls again, and then there is silence, and Eleanor sinks deeper into rest, deeper into the soft, welcoming darkness. Her breathing has slowed even more, each breath taking longer, each pause between breaths stretching out. She is breathing so slowly now that she is barely aware of it, and her body has become so still that she might be mistaken for someone already deep in sleep. But she is not quite asleep, not yet. She is hovering on the edge, suspended in that liminal space where consciousness fades but has not yet disappeared, where the world is distant but still present, where she is aware but not quite thinking. The room is very dark now, darker than it has been all evening, and Eleanor can no longer see the familiar shapes of the furniture, the bookshelf, the mantelpiece, the hearth. They have all been swallowed by the darkness, and she is alone in it, held in a space that is both comforting and infinite. She does not feel afraid. The darkness is a friend, a gentle presence that asks nothing of her, that simply holds her and keeps her safe. She thinks one last time of the village, of the cottages with their closed doors and darkened windows, of the lanes that wane through the night, empty and still. She thinks of the people asleep in their beds, dreaming or resting in the deep quiet of the night. She thinks of the church at the center of the village, its stone tower rising against the stars, its bells silent until morning. She thinks of the fields beyond the village, stretching out into the darkness, and the hills beyond the fields, and the wide sky above it all, filled with stars. And then even these thoughts fade, and there is only the darkness, soft and complete, and the silence, deep and unbroken, and the slow, gentle rhythm of her breathing, moving in and out, carrying her deeper and deeper into rest, into peace, into the soft, endless embrace of sleep. Eleanor is at rest now, truly at rest, and the night holds her gently, wrapping her in its quiet arms, and she sleeps, or something very close to sleep, in the small cottage at the edge of the village, safe and warm and perfectly at peace.